So those that have just joined the center have inspired me. There were a few more people that had filled out the cards that didn't come today. One of them said to me when we spoke that she had changed her mind because Barbara and I are leaving, and she'd rather wait and just see what happens. Bless her heart. You know, because when you make a choice like that, then you don't have any say in what happens. Then you're just strictly an observer, just watching, letting other people decide what's best for you. I don't think that's the best way to be. But she's doing what she needs to do. Somebody else said they just weren't ready. Okay, all right. I understand that. I've held back on things in my life when I wasn't really ready. And everybody's always in their perfect and right place. It's sometimes hard for me to remember, but when I do remember it, I feel better, you know? So this was a big day for me. What an impressive group of individuals who really lift us up. And what that took me to was this idea of the value of this community to us. And if I were to survey all of you, you'd give me a different reason as to why this place is important to you. You would say certain individuals are important to you, or certain things that we do are important to you. I've had people tell me that they come for the bowls, that they just want to hear those bowls. That's fine. And I'm sure there's probably somebody here who comes for the food. What are you going to do? So I thought I'd begin this conversation by sharing a little bit of my story and my relationship with spiritual community. I was raised in a traditional Christian environment. Although my parents didn't take us to church, they sent us to church. It was like a drive-by. They would pull up in the front, let us all out, and off they'd go. And truly, I'll give them a break here. They had 4 very, very active children, and they probably just wanted a little peace and quiet for a couple of hours on Sunday morning. So I get it, no problem. But that's all I knew. That's all I knew was that teaching and that idea of what God was. And it worked till it didn't work. I was actually a youth minister there for a while. That doesn't mean I was employed by them. It was just a thing when they would have this youth week. They had one of the youth in the community be the youth minister who got up on Sunday and read a Bible passage. It was no big deal. But I did get to play that role. Didn't really mean a lot to me. In fact, it scared the bejeebers out of me to actually get up and read in front of people. But I got through it. And then came the time that I was infatuated with a woman. And one of the assistant ministers said to me, because this woman happened to be divorced, and I was still a teenager, that meant that I was going to hell. Well, my hormones didn't want to hear that. So I immediately left the church and focused on the relationship. And eventually got married, actually moved from South Florida to southern Texas, not too far south, Houston, and set up home there. Went to work in the oil field industry, and wasn't too long after that we got married and then had a child. I thought I was on my path in a way that was really going to work out, because I went into that industry to learn it, and then I started my own company. And it very quickly grew into a multi-million-dollar operation. Crazy. I was still in my 20s. And so I'm thinking that this is the plan, that really what you want in life is a family, a lot of money, a nice big house, and a new car. And if you got those, you're perfect. It's all working. I got all those things, and it really wasn't working. So I, for a very short period of time, went back to the not the church, but the faith that I had been in as a young person, and very quickly again recognized that wasn't working for me, that there were too many things about it that I couldn't reconcile. So we went along and came to a point where the industry that I was working in collapsed, and we closed my company, and I started doing other work. But there was a restlessness going on. And my wife at the time, not this one, but that first wife decided that she no longer wanted to be married to me. And one day while I was at work, she had a moving company come and take everything out of the house. She didn't take my clothes, thank God. But pretty much everything else, there was a box of pictures she left. Everything else, along with my 6-year-old son, and they left and went back to Florida. So I had to make a decision. What are you going to do here? And my choices were that I could see at the moment were either go back to Florida and go to war, or run away as far as I could. So I picked running away. And I went to Sydney, Australia, which is technically on the other side of the planet. Most people, you grow up thinking where they tell you if you dig a hole straight through the earth, you'll go to China. That's not true. You will go to Australia. So that's where I went. I went to Sydney, Australia. And the third day that I was there, I had the name of one person in this entire city, and she was a friend of a friend, and she was going to give me a tour of the city. And I was waiting for her, standing on the sidewalk outside of the downtown Hilton. And while I'm waiting for her, looking, I don't know what she looks like, and I don't know what kind of car she's in, so I'm really focused over there. Somebody comes up to me and wants to have a conversation, and I'm distracted. And he says that there's a lecture happening the next night, and would I like to come to it? I got nothing to do. So I said, sure. And so the woman that was picking me up pulled up, and off I went. He asked for a phone number. I was staying at a hostel. I had no phone number. And this was before cell phones, so there just wasn't anything there. And so I hopped in the car with whatever he gave me that had an address on it, and I went on my tour. I never saw that woman again. But the next night, I went to this place in a building in downtown Sydney, and came into the room, and it was a room, I guess about a third the size of this one, but it was filled with people, interested people, and the person that had invited me saw me and came up and said, here, sit up front with me. And he leaned over and said, I really didn't think you were coming. He didn't understand I had nothing to do. So I sat there, and when it started, a man got up on the stage and started talking in a way that I'd never heard, but it sounded so right. And it wasn't religious. It was nothing about it was religious. He talked about energy and about how we use energy. And I was fascinated. And at one point he asked for someone to come up to do a demonstration, and somebody went up there, and the guy next to me, he's pushing, go, you do it. No, I'm just going to watch. And so he had this guy come up, and they did this thing where he had him become aware of his energy field, and Ken, the teacher, was being aware of his energy field, and he said, blend those two energy fields. Where do you feel it? And the guy said, I don't know. He said, thank you very much. And he had the guy get down from the stage. Who else do we have here that would do this? Okay, so up I went. Well, he did the same exact thing, and when he said, where do you feel it? I go, right here. He said, right, what you're experiencing is love. You can have experienced love with anybody. I said, oh God, this guy's got me. And I couldn't leave. And I became a staff member there, and I got all involved, and I had to do the thing the guy had done with me and go out and talk to strangers on the street, which was the scariest thing in my life, to have people like laugh at me or kick me or tell me somehow I should leave them alone. But yet I did it, and I worked through that fear, and it was a great move for me to be able to work through that. So this was my first spiritual experience in community. I don't think I was having a spiritual experience in my youth, but I was now. This was different. This was waking me up to who I was. And I spent a year in that community doing incredibly powerful work. Just so you get a sense of it, Ken, my teacher, was trained in the disciplines of Zen Buddhism and Scientology. Ooh. Well, he had left the Church of Scientology, and they weren't really happy because he figured all that out and didn't need them anymore. But I got the best of all of that from him, and I learned some extraordinary things about how to live my life and make a difference. Because when I got to Australia, even in those first days, I quickly realized that it wasn't going to change because I went to Australia, because I was still there. It was going to change because I was exposed to ideas and other people that I could model in how to live my life. And that carried me into a place of really seeing how incredibly important it is to be in community, spiritual community especially. So when the time came, I returned to the United States. My mom called me and said that my son needed me, and I don't know that he needed me any more than he had in any other time, but she just wanted me to come home. So I did, and I moved in with her, and she would let me take her car and take her to work in the morning, and then I had the car for the day, and I'd pick her up. I'm driving down Miller Road, a main thoroughfare in South Miami, and I pass a building I've passed 1,000 times and never noticed because I wasn't ready. Didn't mean anything to me. And they had a beautiful sign up there that said Center for Positive Living with birds and palm trees, and it was a lovely sign, meant nothing to me. On the building it said Miami Church of Religious Science. Still nothing. But there was this more or less dilapidated sign that probably somebody was supposed to get rid of that was there. It had rust on it, and it was really old, and it said Science of Mind. And when I saw that sign, that my mom's car actually, I felt like it pulled into the parking lot by itself. I got out, I went into the office. A woman came out from her office, said, "How can I help you?" I said, "What's Science of Mind?" You see, I thought that what I got when I was in Australia was the only place in the world that I could get that. I didn't know that there were places like that in the United States. So I went in there and had this conversation, and I don't remember what she said, but she invited me to come on Sunday. And again, it changed my life. It changed my life. Because what I was learning there is that there's a presence in me that is so powerful and so able to create that I could actually have the life that I longed for. So I just immersed myself into that place. They put me on the board pretty quick. And then there came a time when it was clear that they needed an administrator there. So I went to one of the ministers, Reverend Tony, and I said, "Tony, what do you think about me being the administrator here?" He said, "That's a lovely idea. Thank you for offering, but no thank you." 2 days later, the president of the board came to me and said, "Hey, John, what do you think about being the administrator here?" And I said, "That's a really good idea." And I became the administrator. The other minister there, her name was Barbara Bonacorso. And she and Tony had gotten married once he was the minister there, which didn't set well with everybody in the community. So there came a time when Barbara and Tony had to leave. And they left the place to me, because I was the next in line there. That we had practitioners, but they weren't all that active. They were not like our practitioners here. So I started running the place. And eventually, the folks out in California sent an interim minister named Bill Hart. William Hart was an amazing presence, and he was good for me. And he taught me a lot, and I was grateful for our time together. And then came the time when the teacher, Terry Cole Whitaker, came to town, and out of that experience, and it's a longer story that I won't do with you now, she ordained me. And actually, she ordained Barbara Bonacorso. If you haven't figured it out yet, that was my Barbara. And that started this whole litany of events that caused me, Barbara and I should say, to fall in love and to change our relationships and to focus on one another. Again, everything changed. But when we left there, we didn't have spiritual community. So Barbara was teaching in a bookstore, and that was nice and all, but it wasn't this. And eventually, we decided to look for another place in the country to live, after Barbara's sister Margaret had her car stolen out of the front yard twice. Welcome to Miami. So we looked around and ended up coming here. We joined the Unity Church in town because that was the most viable thing that we found. And that was good for us because we became very involved in the leadership there, and it was a good time. But at some point, I knew that Barbara wouldn't want to go back into ministry. And when she was ready, that's exactly what we did. And we started this community in our living room. And it's been going on ever since. That was 27 years ago. 27 years, believe it or not, is a long time. We've done this in a good way. And it has been the center of my life to be in spiritual community. And I am so grateful that all of you have joined us to be part of this. It's made a difference in my life. So thinking about all of this, I came up with some ideas. Oh, I don't have a clicker. I don't have a clicker. What's that? Oh, it's over there. Forgive me. Rodney puts it on my podium. Whatever. Okay, so I have some ideas as to why people do this. At least, I guess these are my ideas on why people do this that I want to share with you. Just to deepen that understanding. And some of them will work for you, some of them may not, I don't care. But just stick with me for a few minutes. We'll get through this quick. The value of spiritual community comes in finding your tribe. God, people have all kinds of ways of being in the world. But on the spiritual path, you fall into categories of how you see the world. I think one of the most interesting things about this community is that in this room right now, you have people that are conservatives, politically, socially, however you want to look at it. And you have other people that are progressive, liberal, whatever word you want to use. Yet we're all in the room together. We're happy together. That's not what's happening in the world right now. It's because we intersect at the point of spiritual understanding. And I have seen people with a conservative viewpoint use this teaching, articulate it brilliantly. And I've seen the same thing happen with people that have a more progressive look at life. So it doesn't matter what your views are in what's going on in our country or even in the world. Spiritual understanding transcends that so that we can all be here together happy. What a blessing. And all we have to do is get that there's something about this idea that whatever the creative force of the universe is, it's right here. It's right at the point of us. And if we can get to that place rather than thinking there's some God outside of us that we have to appeal to have the life we want, gives it a really different take. And I'm not telling you that those people are wrong. I've come to a great conclusion in my life that anyone that sees the divine differently than I do is not wrong. They're just seeing it in a way that I'm not interested in. So we all get to do it our own way, without blame, without fault. And our way here is to know that the divine lives at the point of us and that we are immersed in that divine presence. And for me, that made all the difference. So then we get to have a social interaction. We get to commune together and food together, do classes and courses and events together. And that's all wonderful, but it's all based in that one basic connection. So this tribe is about knowing the presence of the divine right where we are. And if we can get to that place, this place will always work for you. That's your tribe, if that works for you. The value of spiritual experience comes in sharing energy. That's what we do here. We talk, yeah, but really what we're doing is we're basking in the love of spirit. And we're exchanging energy. That's what I learned in Australia, was that all communication is about an exchange of energy. Most of it is not in what you're saying. Most of it is how we're being and how we're connecting. And that's what we come here to do. And we feel better when we do that. Life works better when we do that. By developing healthier relationships. Well, that's a continuation of the energy thing, but it's true. When I've asked people in this community, who are the most important people in your life? Inevitably, most everybody says, people in this community. Why is that? Because we're a tribe, because we exchange energy, because we truly love and support one another. And that makes all the difference. And that those bonds last a lifetime. And it's good for us to have this. It really is good for us. because we have a safe place to practice principle. What is principle? It's knowing the oneness of God and identifying it at the point of us. That's, you can make it fancy, you can add other ideas to it, but that's it. That's principle. So we come here to remember that truth about ourselves and to act accordingly. Now, we may not be able to do that at work right away. We may not be able to do it at a family reunion. We may not be able to do it in a lot of places. But we can do it here because it's a safe place, because we're all in that same desire to express our spiritual nature and to know what we're doing in the midst of it. And when we do that, we get the benefit of being able to do it with people that love us and support us, even when times are hard. The value of spiritual community comes in living healthier and longer lives. And this is really true of pretty much any kind of spiritual community. There's been a lot of research done on this. People who are in spiritual community are healthier. That doesn't mean that everybody is 100% all the time, but it really makes a difference. This comes from actual research studies of people in spiritual community, that those who are in community have generally better health, have greater psychological well-being, are less depressed, have less hypertension, have a greater ability to handle stress, manage their emotions more effectively, have reduced blood pressure, have a well-functioning immune system, have greater sense of their well-being, and generally live longer than those that are not in spiritual community. That right there is enough reason to be here. We're doing this right, and life's working for us. The value of spiritual community comes in maintaining an effective spiritual practice. I don't know how many of you actually do this, but we want to support you in having spiritual practice, whether that's meditation or what we call spiritual mind treatment or some other form of practice. It's important for us to spend some time every day. It's just as important as exercising your body. It's important that we spend some time remembering the truth of who we are. How you do that is not as important than it is that you do that. And we model that for you by doing treatments, by having practitioners come up, by making practitioners available to you, by giving you access to materials in our bookstore, by creating this place where your life can be enriched by a practice of remembering the truth of your being. How could that not make our lives better? Now, some may choose not to do that, but for me, this was a powerful piece of the puzzle. And finally, the value of spiritual community is being lifted up as we lift others. And that's what we do. You see, we are not a judgmental group. It's never our intention to find fault in anyone. If someone is struggling here, we don't feel sorry for them. We don't have sympathy for them. We know the truth that they are spiritual beings and that their very essence is love and light. And even though they're going through something hard, they're finding their way. And that's lifting them up. Well, you say, oh, poor baby. So sad to see that you're struggling in your life. No room for that. Only the good of knowing the highest calling of our lives is to live the life of being the divine presence. That's what we're here to do. And when we do that, we too are lifted up. We have to be. How can we not? Because what we know for others is what we know for ourselves. And once we do it with people here, then we can do it anywhere. One of the people that was in class, and I don't have permission to give names, so I won't, was talking about their partner who they found who brought them here. And the conversation was elegant about how there would be some point of seeing something with a little judgment. And the partner would go, nah, they're just going through something. They're fine. They're really doing fine. Wouldn't it be lovely to be in relationship with somebody who can remind us all the time how wonderful life is? Yeah, that's the work. And that's why we're here together. So we are here together. We are here together to do this work, to find our way to support one another. And we do that as members of Center for Spiritual Living Asheville. I'm better for it. And I know that if that's your path, you're better for it too. And life is good. And God is all there is. And so it is. Yeah.